Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. This is Grump Acres Farm, and this live is another installment of our City Survival 101 series. It's an ongoing series that we got going where we are discussing the different aspects of survival through an urban crisis within the full spectrum framework, full spectrum preparedness framework. Before we get going, let's say hi. We got Len's in the chat right now. What's up, Len? Hey, if you're on YouTube watching this, get out of the top chat, get into the live chat so that you can see all the messages. If you're on Rumble or X, go ahead and jump over on the YouTube side if you got anything to say. I cannot see comments on Rumble through the software I've got, but I'd love to hear from you. Good evening, Jane. So tonight's video is going to be about the aspect of transportation. And the very basis of it all, mobility means survival. So we're not going to talk about shiny cars or the latest electronic scooter trends. We're going to be talking about how you're going to move when the world around you is falling apart. From Hurricane Katrina to the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami in Japan, history has shown us over and over again that mobility is survival. If you're stuck, you're vulnerable. If you can move, you've got all sorts of options. Now, before we get into it, let's go take a look at this week's Monday morning poll. So the Monday morning poll the question was, if you had to leave your home in an emergency and your main method of transportation didn't work, what would your alternative method be? So 46%, there were 28 votes, 46% said secondary personal vehicle, 7% said bike or e-bike, 39% said on foot with a bug-out bag, and 7%, and shame on you 7%, I don't have a plan for an alternative method yet. Keyword in that is yet, because after tonight, you're gonna have some ideas on how to get that alternative method or what that alternative method should be. All right. So let's go to the first slide. Boom. So here's a quote from Martin Luther King, and I understand this is not about cars, but I thought it summed up the whole idea of transportation during an urban crisis in a nutshell. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. Keep moving forward. You got to keep moving forward if you're going to survive, guys. Seriously. Next slide. Okay, why does transportation matter within the full spectrum preparedness framework? So in calm times, we take transportation for granted. We assume that roads will be clear, fuel will be available, and buses will keep running. But in a crisis, that fantasy dies quick. You know, in Katrina, thousands were left stranded. Fuel was gone in a couple of days. Actually, as soon as the dikes burst or the pumps quit working, the fuel was gone because all the gas stations flooded. Buses didn't come for the people. And in Japan's earthquake and tsunami, survivors had to walk miles over twisted, broken infrastructure. You know, the simple fact is that transportation is the lifeline that holds all the other aspects together. So in an urban or suburban crisis, transportation is not a luxury, it's life support. Now, here's a question for you. I'm going to let you guys, I'm going to get a drink of my lemonade. You guys can answer this question in chat. If you had to leave your home in the next 30 minutes, what's your first mode of transportation? Personal vehicle, bike, motorcycle, horse, leather express, shoe leather express, as we used to call it in the Marine Corps. What's your first mode of transportation in an emergency? You know, here's the deal about this question. It doesn't have to be a crisis. It can be an emergency. You could cut yourself and have to go to the hospital really quick. So don't think some ultimate collapse of the infrastructure This is a daily thing, all right? So we got 2 votes for POVs. Skanes wants to know if there's enough lemonade to share. Yeah, I got more than enough in the kitchen. So if you were here, I could share it with you, Skanes. So if you're watching this on replay and you want to answer that question, go down in the chat. Tell us what your primary mode would be if you had to leave your house within the next 30 minutes. Next one. Transportation in the full spectrum preparedness model. Like I was saying before, transportation, actually, I didn't say this. This is what I should have said, actually. Transportation is like the circulatory system of preparedness. It connects water, food, shelter, medical aid, energy, and communications. Without it, you lose flexibility, you lose the ability to resupply, and you lose the ability to get out of danger. Imagine this. I want you guys to think about this. You're not able to get to your water cache in a crisis. You've got a spring, but it's 2 miles down the road, and you can't get to it because you don't have any way to get there and bring the water back other than a bucket, right? Or what about not being able to move an injured family member? Like I said, going to the hospital, taking them to the hospital. You're not able to move them because the bridge is washed out, like happened in Hurricane Helene. You know, what about if you get news that there are marauders in the area or looters in the area, and you want to reposition your security, but you can't? You know, it's going to take them too long to get to where they need to be. You know, the transportation is the bridge between all the different survival categories. And I say that, but you got to understand, if you want to think about full spectrum preparedness as a whole, it's a holistic framework. So each one of these aspects that we talk about is closely knit with all the other ones. All right. Now, here's a question for you. So let's just use the aspects that are on the page here. So we got water and food, we got shelter, we got security, we got medical, we got comms, and energy. Now, if you were on our live last night, I explained energy in the full spectrum preparedness framework is not an aspect in and of itself because it is such an organic thing. It's more integral to every single other aspect than the 10 aspects are with themselves. All right, so it's organic to each one of the aspects. So when we're talking about energy for transportation, we're talking about diesel, gas, maybe ethanol if you've got some of that. Wood, if you've got a wood gasifier on a vehicle, you got that. I worked with a guy that had a car that ran off of Chinese cooking oil. He used to get it from the Chinese place down the road from where he lived, and every time he drove that car to the parking garage where we worked, it smelled like wontons. So that energy is a very versatile thing or not versatile, diversified thing within the transportation aspect. All right. So which one of these would suffer the most if you didn't have transportation? I'm going to say security is what would suffer the most. And I'm not going to go into the reason why. I'm just going to say security would suffer the most. What is it? What about you? What about you? Go ahead and put it in the chat. I'm going to take another sip of my lemonade. And wait for you guys to post that. Let's switch the slide. Okay, so if you live in the city, let's talk about what you're up against when things go sideways in the city. And this is these problems, these challenges I'm going to talk about happen no matter where you are, but in a city, they're amplified and they become much more hampering. They hamper things much more in an urban or suburban environment than if you live in a rural environment. You know, quite honestly, the only gridlock I get around here is if somebody's cows get out on the road, you know, that, or a tractor during harvest season. That's gridlock here. You know, where in the city, if you've ever driven through LA during rush hour, I did it back in the 90s. I can't even imagine what it would be like today. It's got to be crazy. So things you got to deal with. Like I was just said, gridlock, highways jam up in minutes. All right. And suburban choke points trap people. And okay, let's talk about the gridlock in the city first. If you've ever been, American cities are all built the same. All major cities are built the same. They've got a highway that runs through the core, and then you've got all the surface streets off the highway, and then they've got a big beltway that runs around them, so you can circumvent the city and not have to drive through downtown. And then they've got major highways spoking off to different cardinal directions. And when that gridlock happens, you know, in the city, it can happen down at the street level. People trying to get out of a specific neighborhood in a city will block traffic, which causes congestion in other sections in the city. And it's the domino effect we're talking about. And in the suburbs, choke points. The choke points are more prevalent there because, you know, when we lived in a rural community it was a bedroom community is what it was. And we lived in a subdivision in that community. And there was literally one road in and one road out. I take that back. There were two roads. There were two roads in and two roads out for that subdivision. And there were about 400 homes there. So you could literally, if you were able to block those two roads, you could literally trap 400 families in that little subdivision. And the only way they'd be able to get out is walk. No Quarter says foot mobility is not one I put much faith in. It happens when you're injured. What happens when you're injured and you can't walk? Yeah, absolutely. Next one, fuel shortages. Gas station close and get emptied fast. I don't know if you're a Gen Xer and you're old enough to remember the fuel crisis in 72 and 73. I remember sitting in line and having the gas stations run out of fuel. Electricity goes out. There's not a single gas station that I know of that doesn't have electric pumps. You know, and this is one of those things that you need to take into consideration. Maybe we're going to talk about some solutions later, but maybe you have a hand pump and a pry bar so you can pry open the lid on the tank and hand pump your fuel out. You know, it's just these things. Public transit collapses. I don't know if you guys remember on 9/11, the subway systems ground to a halt, and those people had to walk out of the subway systems just to get to the surface streets. And then by the time they got out, the gridlock had taken place, and they had to walk out of Manhattan. And the infrastructure failures is the next one. I'm sorry, I skipped infrastructure failures. I went straight to public collapse. But again, the 9/11, you know, the subway system underneath the Twin Towers was destroyed, which disrupted the whole network. Bridges go out, tunnels get blocked, traffic lights die, a whole multitude of things can happen. And again, it just creates that domino effect. And then the next one is vehicle targeting. Criminals setting up roadblocks and hijacking cars and fuel. We see this, you know, we saw this. There's talk about this in Buenos Aires in Argentina during the economic collapse there. South Africa, urban collapse in Johannesburg. Just in modern times, like as we're talking right now, they are hijacking cars and stealing cars, stealing fuel, and just wreaking mayhem on people. All right, and then finally the sixth and final one is limited foot mobility. Just like No Quarter said, not every city is walkable, especially in chaos. So I worked in downtown Kansas City for about 17 and a half years, and I was down in the hood. And one of the things that I planned on doing, if something happened and I could not get the vehicle out of the parking garage and drive home, I was going to have to walk. So I had to plan a route. And I would have been walking through the worst parts of Kansas City, the most dangerous and violent parts of Kansas City. So I had to come up with a plan to transverse that patch of ground safely. All right. Think about where you live. So here's the next audience check-in. Which of these six challenges, which of these do you think would hit your area hardest? Go ahead and drop your answer in chat. Which one of those six challenges would probably be the one you would have the hardest time facing, or I not facing, but it would hit your area hardest? Again, my answers are going to be different because I live out in the country. It's completely different out here. Yeah, Lynn, I'm gonna agree with you. LA and DC, Atlanta. I'm gonna add Houston to that list. Worst driving. In Houston, the traffic signs are not rules; they are suggestions that everybody ignores. All right, let's go to the next slide. What are we looking at here? Practical solutions, practical mobility solutions. All right, preparation beats panic every time, guys. Let's break down some solutions. Probably the first thing you want to do, even before a crisis happens, you should be doing this constantly. Vehicle preparedness. Number one, keep your vehicle mechanically sound. I know that's hard. It gets expensive, right? But you need to keep it in working order. And even then, you never know what can happen. We had some hydraulic hoses pop on us when we were out in Kentucky coming back from a festival. And so we had to deal with that. Took our vehicle down for a day. Always have at least half a tank of gas. You want to have that half a tank of gas, because if something happens and you get stuck in traffic and you're down to a quarter tank or an eighth of a tank, chances are you're going to run out of fuel, and then you become stranded in this big mass of panicked humanity. All right. Keep a low profile appearance. I don't know, what was it? The Kia that was the most stolen car. You don't want to drive a car that's flashy. You don't want to drive a car that is commonly stolen by criminals. In fact, the older and more rattier it looks, the better, because you don't want people thinking that it's a good, rich target. Okay, have a go bag in the vehicle. First aid, maps, water, comm gear. Have everything that you need in that bag to survive for at least 3 days if you have to jump in the vehicle and leave. And some other things, something else that you need to have in your bag. You need to have a set of tools. Have a set of tools so that you're not stuck on the side of the road with a problem that is easily fixable, but for lack of tools. And have skills. Get your skills. Learn how to work on your vehicle. All right. And I know the new vehicles, make it really hard to work on it yourself, but even them, you can still do some rudimentary stuff and take care of some very simple problems. And then the last one in this section is multiple route knowledge. The primary route you're looking to get out of town on may be clogged up. It may be destroyed. So you want multiple routes. This is one of the reasons why I'm a huge advocate of driving your routes, knowing the roads in your vicinity, but B, having a paper map and an atlas or a map of the state with the locality in it, but having a map. Do not rely on GPS, because technology will fail. It's not a matter of might, it's a matter of will. It will fail at some point. So have that knowledge in your brain and have a paper map and be ready to go. I used to, back in the days of MapQuest, I literally printed off the routes I wanted, and I had them folded up in the vehicle, so I could just pull them out and I knew where I need to go. But I also drove them enough that I didn't have to do that. All right, let's go to, oh, what's that one? Oh, we just did that one. I missed that slide. I apologize, guys. So the next one is, there's no slide for this, but we're going to talk about route planning. You know, you talk about having multiple routes. So how do you plan a route? And this is a high-level overview, guys. It's a lot more involved than what I'm going to say, but this at least gets you into the ballpark when you're thinking about it. And yeah, so much construction around here, you're faced to learn alternate routes and from detours alone. Absolutely, absolutely. Now imagine that with a urban crisis plopped down on top of it. So you want to have primary routes, secondary routes, and tertiary routes. You need to map these out, use GPS, paper maps, like I said, and most definitely you need to recon them. And what you're looking for is the quality of the road, how fast you can travel on it, and choke points. You want to know where the choke points are. You want to know where entrances and exits to freeways are, because those are natural choke points. You want to know where major intersections are, because those become choke points. You know, you might want to have a route that if your primary route's a high-speed avenue, like a 4-lane city boulevard, but there's choke points on it, you might want to know how to take a side street and circumnavigate that choke point. All right. And the final one with your route planning is, once you've got it planned, you need to leave early. All right. This is important, because if you leave when everybody else does, you're going to be stuck in the rush. You need to be on top of things. You need to be communicating. You need to be keeping your eyes open and know when it's time to leave. Just like if you're bugging out on foot, same thing in a vehicle. You know, and the other thing about your route planning is you got to have a foot route alternative. You need to have the ability to walk out of wherever you are. You know, and some of the things you got to consider with that is you need to have good shoes in your bug out bag. You know, maybe keep a bug out cart in your vehicle. You know, you could get a little, like a jogging stroller or something like that, something that folds up. Stick it in your trunk or in the back of your truck. Bikes with panniers, the side saddles or the basket or even a side cart on it. And then finally, e-bikes or scooters with backup charging. You know, you got the foot route and the alternative methods of moving. You know, they make a little foldable gas scooter that is the size of a suitcase. You know, that might be an option for somebody. Okay, now here's the question for you. Do you know more than one way out of your neighborhood without using the main road? Now, if you want to, you can share how. You don't have to if you don't want to violate OPSEC. But do you know more than one route out of your neighborhood without using the main road? You know, I told you about the little subdivision we lived in. We had a Chevy truck when we were living there, and I could drive down to the end of the cul-de-sac and cut across one of my neighbor's yards, go through. They had a gate that emptied out onto a county road on the back side of the thing. So I would have just had to drive right through their yard, go through that gate, and I was out, and nobody could stop me. So Tiger says yes, several ways out. Leonard, yes, I have multiple routes out of my main residence of our property. Hog says yes, mostly by dirt bike or on foot, but manageable. No quarters. I have no problems driving on the sidewalks if the road is clogged. Well, that's, you know what? That's always an option. That's always an option. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about. Well, did I cover everything on that slide? Half tank, low profile, vehicle, go. Yep, multiple routes, absolutely. All right, next thing we're going to talk about. This is probably It's probably one of the most debated survival questions out there, guys. And the true answer to do you stay shelter in place or bug out is it depends. Period. That could be the end of the discussion. But we're gonna just discuss both options. Okay, so you want to stay put if everything's secure, you've got good stocks, food, water, everything you need to survive for an extended period of time, and it's safe. All right. And just because it's safe now, well, we'll talk about that. I'll discuss that in a little bit. Now, bugging out. You bug out if there's a direct threat. The looters, the marauders, the golden horde, whatever you want to call it, is starting to rampage through your neighborhood. You've got a compromised shelter. A storm happened and it blew the roof off your building, and water's pouring down it, or your supplies are depleted. You're running out of supplies and you have to go get more. Again, it's one of the reasons why we need transportation. Because what if you can get to supplies without having to give up your shelter? What if that's the only thing that's the problem and you're still secure and safe? Maybe you go get food and bring it back. But flexibility is the key here, guys. We have to be flexible. Again, like I said, the proper answer is it depends. Okay, now here's the next question. Here, throw one in the chat if this applies to you right now. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Put a 1 in the chat if the answer is shelter, or the answer, or a 2 if the answer is bug out. So right now, based on where you live, do you think you'd be more likely to shelter in place? That's a 1, or bug out? That's a number 2. So what do you think? Do you think you're gonna have to leave quickly, leave at the beginning of a crisis, or better yet, before the crisis starts? Or are you going to stay put and shelter in place? Jane says she's not going anywhere. Same with Lynn. Lynn's sheltering in place. Tiger, sheltering in place. Hogs, sheltering in place. Now, here's the thing about bugging out. Listen, this is key to bugging out, seriously. If you bug out without a known secure location to go to, one that's well stocked, it's secure, and you know it's there, then you are not bugging out, you are becoming a refugee. And you do not want to become a refugee, because when that happens, you have to live by the whims of others, either the government or bandits or whatever. Right? So you have, if you're going to bug out, and even if you're sheltering in place, you should have an alternative shelter location prep for you, friend's house, your own property, whatever. But you need to be able to know that it's there and know that it's secure. All right, the next slide. Community and mobility. You knew it was going to come back to community. It always comes back to community on this channel. If you're new here and you're watching this on replay, we always talk about community. It's probably, in my opinion, it's probably the most important aspect of preparedness there is out there. Oh, let's see. Hog says, depending on the scenario, though, for example, if it's a fire, I'm bugging out. I live in the mountains and surrounded by timber. See, again, flexibility. It depends. Prove my point. Thank you very much. You get a gold star for preparedness today. Skeen says, at this point, I will shelter in place unless necessary, but we have at least 3 places to go if necessary. Yep. That's good. It's good planning there. Okay. Community and mobility. You can prepare solo, but if you want to survive, it's better as a team. You're better being part of a team. And here's the reason why. So if crisis happens, you can set up mutual aid convoys. Your community, you've got more vehicles, more people. You can practice. We actually practiced convoying a little bit back in the old days of Midwest Preparedness Festival. Before it got big, we practiced convoying a couple times. You know, you assign roles, you set up comms, you set up rally points in case people get separated. But these mutual aid convoys, you know, and it's something. It could be something as simple as going to the grocery store. You know, if you live in a neighborhood and the grocery store's a mile or 2 miles away, you get 4 or 5 cars, head over there as a group. You leave one group as security, and another group goes in and gets one item. You know, they focus on one set of items, another group focuses on another set, and it just makes it more secure and more efficient. The next one is shared resource. Do what? No, I didn't. I don't need the glasses. Don't interrupt my live. Take them. Go. Shush. The next one. Sorry for that interruption, guys. The next one is shared resource pools. Coordinating who has vehicles and who needs rides. Even in a crisis, people are going to need to get from point A to point B just for regular things. You know, if the hospitals are still open, people may need to go to the doctor's office, grocery runs, whatever. You share these resources. If you've got a car and your neighbor doesn't, you help them out. You barter in return for taking them someplace. The next one, neighborhood watches. Setting up mobile neighborhood watches. This is in the city. This is really good because you're talking about a large area. You know, your neighborhood may encompass 10 city blocks. All right, that's a huge area, and it becomes much easier to patrol and respond to threats if you've got mobility than if you're having to do everything by foot. Okay, now here's a question for everybody. Do you have at least one neighbor you trust enough to plan an evacuation with? Are you confident in somebody's ability and somebody's trustability that you would plan an evacuation with them? I'm going to say yes. Even though I don't live in the city, I'm going to say yes. You know, no. Hog says no. No. It's not good. You got to get out there and talk to people. Get some people involved. Have a potluck. But we'll discuss that. We'll discuss that whenever we talk about community. The next one, special mobility needs. Now, we can't overlook people with mobility needs. Wheelchairs, walkers, prosthetics. In planning, make sure vehicles and routes are accessible with backups ready and communication is clear. Leaving somebody behind isn't an option in a true community, right? Now, what we're talking about, you know, you need to have a vehicle that can handle taking the equipment with them, the wheelchairs, the walkers, the prosthetics. You know, somebody's in a wheelchair and you've got a small car. You're not going to be able to stick that wheelchair in the car, even if it folds down. I know some people with really small cars. You know, we have a truck. We could throw any equipment in the back of the truck that we need, you know, and then we want to make sure the routes are accessible, you know, and not necessarily, yes, for the vehicles. That's obvious. But more so with walking routes. What if somebody is in a wheelchair and you have to go through an area where the buildings have been demolished and there's no clear path? How are you going to carry that wheelchair across all that stuff? If you haven't planned, then yes, you are, or you're going to end up leaving somebody behind. You know, and again, having the backup routes and having backup transportation is important. And finally, you know, the communication. Being able to find out who needs what, who is where, and how to get to them is important. And like the last sentence, leaving somebody behind isn't an option in true community. You know, morally and ethically, I'm going to say that we have a responsibility to help take care of these people. All right. Now, if someone in your group had mobility challenges, how would you adapt your transportation plan? You know, if you're planning it right, I could see you making a plan and then somebody falls and breaks a leg, which in a crisis, stuff like that's bound to happen. If somebody breaks a leg, you're gonna have to change your plans. I'm gonna say our plan. We can handle that. We can handle that. Well, you know what? No quarter. Bring that up. Remind me when we're doing the live on the aspect of community, and we will discuss that, because that is a common thing in the prepper community. All right. So you don't think that you're alone in that respect. All right. The next one: legal, moral, and ethical considerations. Crises test your survival skills and your values. So, don't block emergency responders with abandoned vehicles. This goes back to making sure you've got a half a tank of gas. You run out of fuel, you block the road, people aren't going to be able to get through because your car's sitting in the way. If you do run out of fuel, before you hoof it on foot, see if you can't push it out of the way. Be cautious with roadblocks. Not all of them are friendly. We spoke about that earlier in the presentation. You know, the bad guys are out there, and they will have no problems taking your stuff if they're. And I'm not even going to say their personal survival. Their personal comfort is merely enough to cause them to try to take your stuff. Avoid looting unless it's truly life or death. There's a huge difference between looting and scavenging. Scavenging is more morally acceptable, but it's also reserved for whenever supplies are really low and you can't find them anyplace. If you run across somebody that has a whole bunch of stuff, you know, you don't want to take their stuff because you might be condemning them to death. You know, so that's one of the cards on the without rule of law deck. Well, actually, several of the cards talk about that, and it's always a hotly debated topic. You know, but it's something you need to think about. Offer help to the vulnerable, but balance safety. So I said that you need to help people that have mobility challenges and stuff. Your morals aren't a death sentence, or let me rephrase that. Your morals can be a death sentence, because if you draw a line, you don't cross it at the risk of death, then that's what that is. And I've got some lines like that. I know other people have lines like that, but you know, you don't want to put your life at risk unnecessarily. All right. Especially if everything looks sketchy. And here's the final thing on the legal, moral, and ethical considerations. At some point after the crisis, your actions will be remembered and judged. Some sort of rule of law always comes back. It may be the formal government, it may be a warlord, it may be somebody else, something else that we don't even imagine yet. In the end, you are going to be held responsible for your actions during a crisis. Remember that. The law, just because the law is suspended, doesn't mean that it's not going to come back and it's not going to come after you. Hog says, I tried setting up radio communication with the community for emergencies, and no one wanted to do it. So that gave me the feeling that with me and my neighbors. Yeah. You know, I could see that. And it is frustrating. It is extremely frustrating. Okay. So here's the big question. Yes or no? Do you think morality changes in a crisis, or should it stay the same no matter what? Does it change? Does your morality change in the crisis, or does it stay the same? I already told you what my answer on that is. You know, I'm gonna try to stay true to my morals as much as possible. One of the biggest reasons I stay versus bugging out is many of my neighbors are older women who can't leave. An old jarhead looking out for them could be life or death. Yep, absolutely, Leonard. Stay the same. Hogs, Jane says the same thing. And I would honestly hope that the people in our online community and the people that come across these videos, I would certainly hope that they've got the moral courage to not be flexible on that account. Right? You're eventually at some point they're going to change. That's just life. But we need to stay true to them as much as possible. All right. The next one, the last one. Oh my God, the writing on that thing is tiny. So what can we do this week? Oh, here, I got to bring this up. I'm going to lose the chat for just a second. Oh, that did not. There we go. All right. What can you do this week? Check your vehicle's mechanical condition and tire pressure. It's very simple to do. It's something you should be doing all the time. Top off your fuel tank and store extra fuel safely. Remember, fuel storage should be at least 50 feet away from any building, because if the fuel goes up, chances are you're going to lose your building if it's closer than that. You can walk or drive alternative routes out of your neighborhood. Go do that route recon we talked about. You know, it's easy to do. If it's walking, just use it as your evening walk and go learn. That's one of the reasons why I used to walk around here. So that I know the area directly around my house pretty good now. Identify at least 2 safe fallback locations, bug out locations, if you will. Have identify 2 safe places that you can go to in case of emergency if your primary shelter is compromised. Assemble or update your vehicle go bag. Okay, guys, listen. This brings up a good point here. So these presentations that I'm giving are a high-level view of all these aspects in the full spectrum preparedness framework. There are people out there that have done a much better job at the nuts and bolts of it all, putting together a bug out bag, putting together a vehicle go bag, tool kits, medical kits, whatever. These presentations are more to help you get a plan. If you're not certain where to go, these are to help you formulate a plan on attacking all these different aspects. All right. I wish I could do a ton of videos on it, but quite frankly, there's people that have done it better than I have. And in that respect, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I'm just going to point you to somebody who knows a heck of a lot more about it than I do. All right. The next one, test navigation apps that work offline. I don't know. I don't have any navigation apps that work offline. All mine are reliant on satellites or the internet. So I need to look into that. I need to see if there's one out there. I take that back. My phone has a compass on it. So if I need to shoot an azimuth to walk someplace, I can do that. So, and it does work offline. And finally, talk to a neighbor about mutual evacuation plans. You know, and like I said, that's something that a lot of people have a hard time with. That's okay. You know, that's okay. But it's work at it. Well, thank you very much. Been off my preps for a while. Absolutely. You know, we get complacent. We get complacent, and we need to. It's an ongoing thing. We should constantly be auditing our stuff. I was out this weekend, making sure that the tires were aired up and all the oil fluids were good. All right, we are to the end of the thing. Now here's my final thoughts. Transportation is not glamorous, but when the lights go out and the streets turn dangerous, it may be the most important piece of your survival puzzle. You need to plan now, you need to practice now, and always have more than one way out. Again, just like everything else, One is none, two is one. And that's the way you need to look at it. Listen, if you got some value out of today's talk, go ahead and hit that like button and share this with somebody who may need it. If you've made it this far and you're new to the channel, it's the first time you ever watched one of these, I appreciate you making it to the end. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and if you want. If not, you can still go to our channel, go to the playlist, and the Urban Survival playlist has all the rest of the videos. Go watch them in order because each one builds on the next one. Next week's topic is communication preparedness in an urban environment. Like I said, subscribe, hit that like button or the thumbs up, and share the video. If you're watching this on replay, comment down below. Go ahead and tell us what you think about this. Let me get this off of here. Boom. We don't need to have that thing up there anymore. We're almost done. But yeah, go ahead and comment on it. If you want to help the channel, go to the links below. We've got the Amazon store has stuff that's associated with the preparedness aspects of our homestead, things that we use on a regular basis or we wish we could use, but we haven't bought yet. We've got the Grumpy Acre store. You can custom order freeze-dried food from us. We've also got the affiliates on there. I don't have, you know what? I do have. You can go to EMP Shield if you're looking at something to help your transportation preparedness. Go to EMP Shield and buy a vehicle. It's a 12 volt EMP Shield. Goes on your vehicle. It will make it so your vehicle is not susceptible to EMPs. It's highly tested, and it works. You know, I invested in the company, and I trust my family's lives on it because it's done all our houses. It's not on the new vehicles that Angela and I got, but it's on the kids' vehicles, and we're getting them on there. We're getting them onto our vehicles here pretty soon. We just got to go get them from somebody that works there. You know, so go get an EMP Shield, and I think my code is Grumpy Acres, is what the code is. If not, just try Grumpy and see how that goes. But if you don't use our code, that's not a big deal. That's not a big deal. Just go get an EMP Shield for yourself, okay? All right, we're to the end. This is a place where I tell you, you need to stay mobile, stay alert, go out and live a life done free, and I will see you on the next video.
Survival isn't just about having the right gear, it's about mindset. In a world without the rule of law, what will you do to survive? WROL isn't just a game, it's a tool to hone your preparedness and survival mindset. Test your instincts, outthink, outlast, and outmaneuver your opponents in a world that's fallen apart. With WROL, every card you play challenges your thinking, tests your adaptability, and sharpens your ability to make tough decisions under pressure. Whether you are planning for an everyday emergency or prepping for the end of the world, WROL helps you prepare for the chaos of everything in between. Ready to level up your survival skills? Click the link in the description to order your deck of WROL cards today and start building your SHTF mindset. The apocalypse starts here.